Two satisfying pops, no louder than a car backfiring, and a woman dropped to the asphalt. Blood pooled under silk. A black SUV tore out of the parking lot and disappeared. Marcus Cole didn't think. He ran. He pressed his dirty shop rag against a stranger's wound and felt her life leaking through his fingers. "I can't go," she whispered. "Not today. Please." He didn't know her name. He didn't know she was worth $2 billion. And he sure as hell didn't know that saving her life tonight would put a target on his own. But here's what nobody expected. What happened next didn't just change his life. It changed everything. If you want to see how far this story goes, drop the name of your city in the comments and subscribe so you don't miss a single part. Marcus Cole's hands hadn't stopped shaking since the alarm went off at 5:47 a.m. Not from fear, from exhaustion. 3 hours of sleep will do that to a man. He'd been up past 2 rebuilding a transmission for a client who needed the car by noon. And before that, he'd been sitting at the kitchen table, staring at a stack of bills arranged in order of urgency. Electricity first, because Zoe needed the lights on for homework. Then the water. Then the shop insurance. Then everything else he couldn't afford. He splashed cold water on his face, gripped the edge of the bathroom sink, and stared at the man in the mirror. 34 years old. Looked 45. The gray at his temples had shown up the year Denise died, like his body decided to age 3 years in one, just to match the grief. "Daddy?" He turned. Zoe stood in the hallway, still in her pajamas, holding a piece of paper. "Hey, Zoe Bug, you're up early." "I made something for you." She held up the paper. A crayon drawing. A man in blue coveralls standing next to a car. A big yellow sun overhead, and the words, "My dad is the best mechanic," written across the top in wobbly letters. Marcus knelt down. "Mechanic," he corrected gently. "That's what I said." "You absolutely did." He pulled her into a hug, pressing his face against her braids so she wouldn't see his eyes getting wet. 7 years old, and she was already the strongest person he knew. "Okay," he said, standing up. "Breakfast. Let's move. We're not going to be late today." "We're always late." "Not today." "You said that yesterday." "Today, I mean it." He made her eggs and toast, packed her lunch, peanut butter and jelly, apple slices, a juice box, and got her dressed in 14 minutes flat. A personal record. They walked the 2 blocks to Westfield Elementary, hand in hand, Zoe chattering about a science project involving volcanoes, Marcus half listening because the other half of his brain was calculating whether he could make rent if the transmission client paid on time. At the school gate, Zoe stopped and turned to face him with the seriousness of a Supreme Court justice. "Pinky promise you'll pick me up on time today?" Marcus extended his finger. Oil-stained. Calloused. A working man's hand. "Pinky promise, Zoe Bug." Their fingers locked. "If you're late, I'm calling Grandma Lorraine." "That's fair." "And I'm telling her you forgot again." "Also fair." She studied his face for a moment, decided he was telling the truth, and kissed his cheek. Then she ran through the gate, backpack bouncing, braids flying, and disappeared into the building without looking back. Marcus watched her go. Every morning, the same ritual. Every morning, the same quiet terror that he wasn't enough. That Denise would have done it better. That Zoe deserved a life he couldn't give her. He shook it off. He always shook it off. There was work to do. Cole's Auto Repair sat on the corner of Elm and 7th, a cinder block building with 2 service bays, a hand-painted sign that had survived 30 years of weather, and a reputation for honest work that went back 3 generations. Marcus's grandfather, Earl Cole, had opened the shop in 1971 with $800 and a set of Craftsman wrenches. His father, James Cole, had run it for 25 years after that. And now Marcus, the last Cole standing, was trying to keep the lights on with nothing but stubbornness and skill. The neighborhood had changed around the shop. What used to be working-class blocks had slowly been swallowed by the city's expansion. Luxury condos on one side, a high-end shopping district on the other, and Cole's auto repair sitting right in the middle, like a man who refused to leave his own house during a flood. Developers had come knocking 3 times in the past year. The last one, a guy in a suit so sharp it could cut glass, had offered $700,000 for the property. Marcus had said no. His father had said no before him. Some things aren't for sale. He was rolling up the garage door when his phone buzzed. A text from his neighbor, Miss Lorraine, 72 years old, retired schoolteacher, the closest thing Zoe had to a grandmother. "You eat breakfast?" He typed back, "Yes, ma'am." "Liar. There's a plate on my porch. Come get it before the squirrels do." Marcus smiled. First real smile of the day. He pocketed the phone and started setting up the shop. The transmission job sat on the lift, half finished. 2 oil changes were scheduled for the morning. A regular, Mr. Pemberton, was bringing in his '98 Buick for the 4th time this month. The old man refused to buy a new car, and Marcus refused to charge him full price. It was going to be a normal day. That's what Marcus thought. Normal days don't start with gunfire. He heard the car first. Not the gunshots, the car. A heavy, powerful engine pulling into the parking lot across the street. Marcus knew engines the way some people knew music. This one was German. A Mercedes S-Class, maybe 2 years old, purring like it had something to prove. He didn't look up. Luxury cars passed through this stretch of road all day. They never stopped at his shop. Different world, different tax bracket, different everything. Then the engine cut off. Then 2 sharp cracks. Close. Fast. Marcus's head snapped up. He knew that sound. He'd grown up in this neighborhood. He knew the difference between a backfire and a gunshot, and those were gunshots. Across the street, a black SUV, windows tinted, no plates that he could see, was already accelerating, tires screaming as it turned the corner and vanished. In the parking lot, a woman was on the ground next to the Mercedes, not moving. For exactly 1 second, Marcus Cole stood frozen. Every survival instinct he'd ever developed told him to stay put. Call 911. Don't get involved. You have a daughter to raise. You cannot afford to be a dead hero. Then the woman moved, just barely. Her hand reached out across the asphalt, fingers clawing at nothing. And something in Marcus broke open. The same something that made his grandfather open a shop in a neighborhood nobody believed in. The same something that made his father stay when everyone else left. He ran. 30 yards across the street in 6 seconds. He dropped to his knees beside her. Blood. A lot of it. Coming from her right side, soaking through a white silk blouse that probably cost more than his truck payment. "Ma'am? Ma'am, can you hear me?" Her eyes were open but unfocused, staring at the sky like she was trying to memorize it. "I can't go," she whispered. "The meeting. I can't." "You've been shot. Can you hear me? You've been shot." Her eyes found his face. Green eyes, sharp even through the pain, and for a half-second they went wide. Not with fear, but with something else. Recognition, maybe. Not of him, of the situation. Like she'd been expecting this. "They actually did it," she murmured. "Who did what?" Ma'am, I need you to stay with me. Marcus yanked off his work shirt, balled it up, and pressed it hard against the wound. She screamed. He held firm. I know it hurts. I'm sorry, but I gotta keep pressure on this. He fumbled for his phone with his free hand and dialed 911. The operator's voice was calm, professional, infuriating. 911, what's your emergency? I've got a woman shot in the parking lot at Elm and 7th. She's bleeding bad. I need an ambulance now. Sir, we're experiencing high call volume. There's been a multi-vehicle accident on the interstate. Estimated response time is 20 to 25 minutes. She doesn't have 25 minutes. Sir, I need you to apply pressure to the wound and keep the victim calm. Marcus hung up. 25 minutes. He looked down at the woman. Her face was going gray. The blood was coming faster now, soaking through his shirt, warm against his hands. What's your name? He asked. Vivienne. Her voice was barely there. Vivienne Laurent. Okay, Vivienne. I'm Marcus. I'm going to pick you up now and put you in my truck and drive you to the hospital. It's going to hurt. I'm sorry. No. Hospital. She grabbed his wrist with surprising strength. They'll find me there. They'll finish it. Who's they? Please. Her grip weakened. Her eyes were closing. Hey, hey! Marcus tapped her cheek. Stay with me, Vivienne. Whoever they is, they're not here right now. I am. And I'm not letting you die in a parking lot. You understand me? She didn't answer. She was fading. Marcus made the calculation in 3 seconds. Hospital was 7 minutes by car. Ambulance was 25 minutes away. Every minute she lay here was a minute closer to dead. He scooped her up. She was lighter than he expected. He carried her across the street to his truck, a 2009 Ford F-150 with 187,000 miles, a cracked windshield, and an engine he'd rebuilt twice. He laid her across the back seat, kept his wadded shirt pressed against the wound, then got behind the wheel and pulled out of the lot so fast the tires left marks on the pavement. Vivienne, talk to me. Tell me something. Anything. 3,000. 3,000 what? People. 3,000 people depend on me. She coughed, and there was blood on her lips. If I die, they lose everything. Nobody's dying today. He ran a red light. Then another. A horn blared behind him. He didn't care. The meeting, Vivienne said, her voice drifting. City Hall, tomorrow morning. The clean energy contract. Don't worry about meetings right now. You don't understand. Her eyes opened, and for one clear moment, she was fully present, fully sharp, fully the woman who had built a $2 billion company from nothing. Raymond Cross tried to kill me. He wants my company. He wants the contract. And if I'm not at that signing tomorrow, he wins. 3,000 jobs gone. The whole project dead. Marcus glanced at her in the rearview mirror. Raymond Cross. The Raymond Cross? Everyone in the city knew that name. Cross Global Industries. Skyscrapers. Political donations. A face on the business section of every newspaper. The kind of man who smiled on camera and crushed people off it. He's been trying to buy me out for 2 years, Vivienne said. I said no. Every time I said no. So he escalated. You're telling me a billionaire just tried to have you assassinated in broad daylight? I'm telling you this city is run by men who think they can take whatever they want. She winced, clutching her side. And I'm the only one standing in his way. Marcus processed this while weaving through traffic. His mind was doing what it always did in a crisis. Working the problem, cutting away everything that didn't matter. Okay, he said. First we keep you alive. Then we deal with the rest. There is no we. You don't know what you're walking into. Lady, I'm already in my truck driving you to the hospital with your blood on my hands. I'm pretty much walked in. She almost laughed. It came out as a cough. He pulled into St. Catherine's Hospital emergency entrance, jumped out, and carried Vivian through the sliding doors, shouting for help. Blood on his arms, his shirt, his jeans. The triage nurse took one look, and everything moved fast. A gurney appeared, doctors appeared. Vivienne was rushed through double doors that swung shut in Marcus's face. And then he was standing there, alone, in a fluorescent-lit hallway, covered in a stranger's blood, breathing hard. A security guard approached him, hand on his radio. "Sir, what happened?" "Gunshot victim. I brought her in." "Are you injured?" "No, it's her blood." The guard looked him up and down. Black man, work clothes, covered in blood, standing in a hospital at 7:30 in the morning. Marcus knew what was being calculated behind those eyes. He'd seen it his entire life. "I'm going to need you to stay here, sir. The police will want to talk to you." "I'm not going anywhere," Marcus said, and sat down in a plastic chair against the wall. He stared at his hands. Vivienne Laurent's blood was drying in the creases of his palms, turning brown at the edges. 3 hours ago, he'd been worried about making rent. Now, he was sitting in a hospital waiting room because a billionaire got shot in front of his shop and told him that one of the most powerful men in the city ordered the hit. His phone buzzed. Miss Lorraine again. "Squirrels got the eggs. Your loss. Have a good day, baby." Marcus closed his eyes, took a breath. Then he did what he always did. He pushed the fear down, buried it under the work, and waited. 20 minutes later, the police arrived. The detective was a woman, tall, sharp-eyed, mid-40s, with a no-nonsense energy that reminded Marcus of his mother. She introduced herself as Detective Nora Shelton and sat down across from him with a notebook that looked like it had survived a war. "Mr. Cole, walk me through it." Marcus told her everything. The sound of the car, the gunshots, the black SUV, finding Vivian on the ground, driving her to the hospital. Shelton wrote without looking at the page, her eyes never leaving his face. "Did you see the shooter?" "No. Windows were tinted. The SUV was gone before I got across the street." "Did Ms. Laurent say anything to you?" Marcus hesitated. She'd said a lot. She'd said Raymond Cross tried to kill her. She'd said 3,000 people's jobs were at stake. She'd said things that could change everything if he repeated them to the wrong person. She said she couldn't die today, that people depended on her. Anything else? She was in and out of consciousness. She wasn't making a lot of sense. Shelton studied him for a long moment. Marcus held her gaze. He'd learned a long time ago that looking away made you look guilty, and being a black man in America meant you were already starting from guilty and working backward. "Mr. Cole, I'm going to be straight with you." "I'd appreciate that. A woman worth $2 billion gets shot, and the only witness is a man with no connection to her who just happened to be across the street. You understand how that looks." "I understand how it looks. I also understand I saved her life." "We'll verify that with the hospital security cameras." "Go ahead." Another long look. Then Shelton's expression softened. Not much, but enough. "Stay in the city, Mr. Cole. We'll be in touch." She stood to leave, then turned back. "One more thing. Ms. Laurent is a high-profile target. Whoever did this may not be finished. If anyone contacts you about what happened today, anyone, you call me." She handed him her card. "Day or night." Marcus took the card. "Am I in danger?" "You witnessed an attempted murder on one of the wealthiest women in the country. What do you think?" She left. Marcus sat there, turning the card over in his fingers. Detective Nora Shelton, Homicide Division. His phone buzzed again. This time it was the shop. Mr. Pemberton's Buick was supposed to come in at 9. Marcus looked at the clock. 8:15. He was going to be late. Again. For once, he had a good excuse. He called Miss Lorraine. "Hey, Miss Lorraine, I need a favor." "Baby, you always need a favor." "Can you pick Zoe up from school today? Something came up at work." "What kind of something?" Marcus looked down at the blood on his clothes. "The complicated kind." A pause. Miss Lorraine had raised 3 sons in this neighborhood. She knew what complicated meant. "I'll get her. You be careful, Marcus." "Yes, ma'am." He hung up and leaned his head back against the wall. He should leave. He should go to the shop, fix Mr. Pemberton's Buick, finish the transmission job, collect his money, pay his bills, pick up his daughter, and forget this morning ever happened. That would be the smart thing. Marcus Cole had never been accused of being smart. An hour later, a nurse came through the double doors and scanned the waiting room. "Mr. Cole?" Marcus stood. "That's me." "Miss Laurent is out of surgery. She's asking for you." He followed the nurse down a hallway that smelled like antiseptic and bad news. Through a door, into a recovery room where Vivian Laurent lay in a hospital bed, hooked up to monitors, pale as paper, but alive. Her eyes opened when he walked in. "You stayed," she said. "Didn't have anywhere else to be." A lie. He had 100 places to be. "Liar." She almost smiled. "Sit down, Marcus. We need to talk." He pulled up a chair. Up close, without the blood and the chaos, he could see her clearly for the first time. High cheekbones, dark hair pulled back, a face that belonged on magazine covers, but right now just looked tired. Tired and scared. "The bullet went through my side," she said. "Missed everything important by about 2 centimeters. Doctor said if I'd gotten here 10 minutes later..." She didn't finish. "But you didn't. Because of you." She turned her head to look at him fully. "A stranger. A mechanic. You carried me to your truck and drove me to the hospital." "Anyone would have done the same." "No." Her voice was quiet, but absolute. "They wouldn't have. Most people would have called 911 and waited. Some people would have pulled out their phones and recorded it. You picked me up and drove." Marcus didn't know what to say to that, so he said nothing. Vivian took a breath. "I need to tell you something, and I need you to really hear me. What happened this morning wasn't random. It was ordered. A man named Raymond Cross has been trying to take my company for 2 years. I've refused every offer. Last week, I found evidence that he's been bribing city officials to block my clean energy contract, a project that would bring affordable power to half the underserved neighborhoods in this city." "Your neighborhood," she added, watching his face. "Elm Street." "Westfield. All of it." Marcus felt something shift in his chest. "Keep talking. Tomorrow morning, there's a signing ceremony at City Hall. The clean energy contract. If I'm there, I present the evidence, Cross is exposed, and 3,000 jobs are secured. If I'm not there, the contract goes to Cross Global by default. His version of the project is a shell. It guts the infrastructure, pockets the public funding, and delivers nothing to the communities that need it most." "And he tried to kill you to make sure you wouldn't show up?" Yes. Marcus sat with that for a long moment. He thought about Zoe's school, where the heating failed every January. He thought about Miss Lorraine's block, where the streetlights had been out for 6 months because the city said there was no budget for repairs. He thought about his shop, sitting in a neighborhood that powerful people saw as nothing but a line item on a development plan. "What do you need from me?" he asked. Vivian's green eyes locked onto his. "I need you to go to my office. Laurent Tech headquarters, downtown. My assistant Theo will meet you. There's a secure hard drive in my private office. It contains everything. Emails, wire transfers, recorded calls. Every piece of evidence that Raymond Cross has been bribing officials and sabotaging my contract. Why can't Theo get it himself? Because I don't know who in my company is working for Cross. Someone told him where I'd be this morning. Someone gave him my schedule, my route, the exact time I'd be in that parking lot. It had to come from inside. She paused. Theo is the only person I trust. And now you. You don't know me. You carried me bleeding to your truck. You drove me to the hospital. You sat in that waiting room for 2 hours covered in my blood. I know enough. Marcus looked at his hands again. The blood was still there. He thought about Denise. What would she say? He already knew the answer. She'd say the same thing she always said when he tried to talk himself out of doing the right thing. You know who you are, Marcus. Act like it. If I do this, he said slowly, and whoever shot you finds out I'm involved, then you're in danger, yes. I won't pretend otherwise. I have a daughter. I know. Vivian's voice cracked for the first time. And I wouldn't ask if there were any other way. But Marcus, if Cross wins tomorrow, the neighborhoods this project was designed to help will be left exactly where they are, including the one where your daughter goes to school. The room was silent except for the beep of the heart monitor. Marcus Cole stood up. Where's your office? Vivian gave him directions between shallow breaths, each word costing her more than the last. Laurent Tech headquarters, 42nd floor. Ask for Theo Park at the front desk. Don't talk to anyone else. Don't explain why you're there. Don't use my name until you're with Theo. Marcus repeated it back. She nodded, then reached for his arm. One more thing. When you get to my office, there's a painting behind my desk. Abstract, red and black. The safe is behind it. Combination is 07-14-91. Your birthday? My mother's. She died when I was 12. Vivian's grip tightened. That hard drive is the only copy, Marcus. If Cross gets to it before you do, everything disappears. Every email, every wire transfer, every recorded call. And tomorrow morning, he walks into City Hall and takes everything I've built. I'll get it. I know you will. She let go of his arm and closed her eyes. The heart monitor beeped steadily. She was already asleep. Marcus stood in the hallway outside her room for a full minute, staring at the floor tiles, having a conversation with himself that he already knew the outcome of. He could walk out of this hospital, go back to his shop, fix Mr. Pemberton's Buick, pick up Zoe, and pretend this morning was just a bad dream. Nobody would blame him. Nobody would even know. Except him. He walked out of the hospital and got into his truck. The passenger seat was soaked with Vivian's blood. The work shirt he'd pressed against her wound was crumpled on the floorboard, dark and stiff. He turned the key and pulled out of the lot. Laurent Tech headquarters was downtown, a building Marcus had driven past 1,000 times without ever thinking about what happened inside. He'd never had a reason to think about it. His world was Elm Street, Westfield Elementary, the garage, the grocery store, and back. A 5-block radius that contained everything that mattered to him. Downtown was a different planet. Always had been. He parked the truck in a garage 3 blocks away because the hourly rate at Laurent Tech's building was $22, and that was more than he'd made so far today. He checked himself in the rearview mirror. Work boots, grease-stained jeans, a plain white undershirt because he'd used his button-up to stop Vivian's bleeding. Blood on his forearms that he tried to wipe off with a fast food napkin from the glove box. He looked exactly like what he was, a mechanic who had no business walking into a corporate tower. He went anyway. The lobby of Laurent Tech was all glass and polished stone, the kind of place where his boots echoed too loud, and people in suits moved in straight lines toward elevators like they'd been programmed. Marcus walked to the front desk, where a young woman with a headset looked up at him with an expression that started at confusion and settled on concern. "Can I help you, sir?" "I need to see Theo Park." "Do you have an appointment?" "No, but Vivian Laurent sent me." The name changed something in the woman's face. Not suspicion exactly, more like a sudden alertness, the way a dog's ears go up at an unfamiliar sound. "One moment." She picked up a phone, spoke quietly into it, her eyes never leaving Marcus. After 30 seconds, she hung up. "Mr. Park will be right down. Please wait over there." Marcus waited. He stood near a wall of windows and watched people cross the lobby. Sharp clothes, sharp shoes, sharp everything. Nobody looked at him directly, but he could feel the attention. He was a disruption in the pattern, a smudge on clean glass. 3 minutes later, the elevator opened, and a slim man in his late 20s stepped out, moving fast. Wire-rimmed glasses, a tie loosened at the collar, and the particular kind of panic that comes from trying to look calm while falling apart inside. "You're Marcus Cole?" "Yeah." "Theo Park, Vivian's executive assistant." He extended his hand, then noticed the blood on Marcus's forearm and pulled back, not in disgust, but in alarm. "Is that hers?" "She's alive. She's at St. Catherine's. Gunshot wound to the right side. They operated. She's stable." Theo's jaw clenched. He took off his glasses, wiped them on his tie, put them back on. A stalling gesture, buying time to keep himself together. "She called me from the ambulance," Theo said, except it wasn't an ambulance. She said a mechanic was driving her in a pickup truck. He studied Marcus's face. "That's you." "That's me." "And she sent you here to get the hard drive." "Yeah." Theo looked around the lobby, then lowered his voice. "We need to move. Follow me and don't talk to anyone." They walked to a private elevator at the back of the building. Theo scanned a keycard and the doors opened. Inside, he pressed 42 and leaned against the wall, exhaling hard. "How bad was it?" he asked. "Bad enough. Bullet went through her side. Doctor said 2 more centimeters and it would have hit something she couldn't live without." "God." Theo closed his eyes. "She told me last week she was getting threats. I told her to hire security. She said she didn't want to look scared." "Well, she should have looked scared." "You don't know Vivian. She doesn't do scared. She does stubborn." Theo opened his eyes. "Mr. Cole, I need to tell you something before we go up there. This morning, about 20 minutes after the shooting, a man came to the office. Said he was from the insurance company. Wanted access to Vivian's private office to assess some policy or another. I told him to come back with paperwork. He didn't argue. He just left." "Insurance men argue," Marcus said. "Exactly. He wasn't insurance. I pulled the security footage after he left. I'd never seen him before. But he knew exactly where Vivian's office was. He walked straight to the 42nd floor without asking directions. The elevator opened onto a hallway lined with frosted glass offices. Theo moved quickly, and Marcus followed, aware of every head turning as they passed. A black man in work boots, walking through the executive floor of a tech company. He might as well have been wearing a neon sign. "In here." Theo stopped at a corner office and scanned his card again. The door clicked open. The office was large, but Marcus barely noticed. He went straight to the painting behind the desk. Abstract, red and black, just like Vivian said. He lifted it off the wall and found the safe behind it. A digital keypad. 07 14 91. The safe opened with a quiet click. Inside was a black external hard drive, about the size of a paperback book, along with a stack of documents and a USB drive. Marcus took all of it. "That's everything?" Theo asked from the doorway, where he was keeping watch. "That's everything." Marcus tucked the hard drive inside his shirt, against his stomach, and put the documents and USB in his back pockets. "Okay, let's go. Same way we came in." They made it to the elevator. Theo pressed the button. The doors opened. A man was already inside. Tall, broad shoulders, a dark suit that fit like it had been built around him. He had the kind of face that looked like it had never smiled. Flat eyes, thin mouth, a jaw that could have been carved from stone. He looked at Marcus first, then at Theo, and something shifted in his expression. Not surprise, recognition. "Mr. Park," the man said. "Going down?" Theo didn't move. "Who are you?" "Garrett Webb, Cross Global Industries." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Nothing about this man reached his eyes. "I was hoping to speak with Ms. Laurent. I understand she's had a difficult morning." Marcus felt the hard drive pressing against his stomach. He kept his face neutral. 34 years of being a black man in America had taught him how to keep his face neutral when everything inside was on fire. "Ms. Laurent isn't available," Theo said, his voice steady, but his hands trembling at his sides. "So I've heard." Garrett's flat eyes moved to Marcus. Lingered. "And you are?" "Nobody," Marcus said. "Nobody." Garrett repeated the word like he was tasting it. "Nobody walks into Laurent Tech headquarters in work boots and gets escorted to the executive floor by the CEO's personal assistant." He tilted his head. "You're the mechanic, the one from the parking lot." Marcus said nothing. "Interesting," Garrett said. "You know, Mr. Cross was very concerned when he heard about Miss Laurent's accident. He asked me to come personally to express his sympathies and see if there's anything Cross Global can do to help during this difficult time." "You can tell Mr. Cross that Mrs. Laurent's company is fully operational and doesn't need his help," Theo said. "Now, if you'll excuse us." Theo stepped into the elevator. Marcus followed. Garrett didn't move to stop them, but as the doors began to close, he spoke again. "Mr. Cole." Marcus looked up. He hadn't given his name. Garrett smiled that empty smile. "Drive safe." The doors closed. Theo exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for a year. "He knew your name," Theo whispered. "Yeah, I caught that." "How did he know your name?" "Same way he knew which floor Vivienne's office was on. Same way he showed up 20 minutes after the shooting pretending to be insurance." Marcus's jaw was tight. Someone in this building is feeding him information. The elevator descended. Marcus could feel his heartbeat in his teeth. "Theo, when we get to the lobby, we split up. You go left, I go right. I parked 3 blocks east in the public garage. Don't follow me, and don't call me until you're somewhere safe." "What if he follows you?" "Then I'll deal with it." "Mr. Cole, this man, Garrett Webb, he has a reputation. People who get in Raymond Cross's way tend to have accidents. Car accidents. House fires. The kind of things that look random but aren't." "I've had a lot of things in my life that looked random but weren't." Marcus looked at Theo. "I'm not leaving that man with a clear path to this hard drive. Vivienne trusted me with it. That means something to me." Theo stared at him for a long moment. "She was right about you. She doesn't know me. She knows people. It's how she built a $2 billion company from nothing. She reads people the way you probably read engines." The elevator reached the lobby. The doors opened. Marcus went right. Theo went left. Marcus didn't look back. He walked through the lobby at a pace that was fast enough to cover ground, but slow enough not to draw attention. Out through the revolving doors. down the block, around the corner, into the parking garage, up the stairs to the third level where his truck sat between a BMW and a Tesla, like a pit bull between two poodles. He was reaching for the door handle when he heard footsteps behind him. Fast, deliberate. Marcus turned. Garrett Webb was 30 feet away, walking toward him with his hands in his pockets and that same dead smile on his face. "Mr. Cole, I think we should talk." "I don't think we should." "You have something that belongs to my employer." "I don't have anything that belongs to your employer. I have something that belongs to Vivian Laurent, and she asked me to hold on to it." Garrett stopped about 10 feet away. "You're a mechanic. You fix cars. You pick your daughter up from school. You live a quiet, simple life. I respect that, Mr. Cole. I really do." His voice was calm, conversational, the voice of a man who had done this before. "But you've stepped into something that is much bigger than you, much more complicated, and much more dangerous. You're threatening me. I'm informing you. There's a difference. Not from where I'm standing." Garrett studied him. "What did she offer you? Money? A new shop? Women like Vivian Laurent don't ask favors from men like you without offering something in return." "She didn't offer me anything." "Then why are you doing this?" Marcus opened his truck door. "Because somebody had to." "That's a nice sentiment. It's going to get you hurt." "Wouldn't be the first time." Marcus got in the truck, started the engine, and backed out of the space. In the rear-view mirror, Garrett Webb stood perfectly still, watching him go, already reaching for his phone. Marcus drove 4 blocks before his hands started shaking. He pulled over, gripped the steering wheel, and breathed. In through the nose, out through the mouth. The way Denise had taught him during Zoe's colicky first year, when he'd been so sleep-deprived he thought he was losing his mind. "Okay," he said out loud. "Okay. Think." Garrett knew his name. Garrett knew he had the hard drive, which meant Raymond Cross would know within minutes, if he didn't already. Which meant Marcus Cole, mechanic, single father, owner of a struggling garage on Elm Street, was now a target. He thought about Zoe. His stomach dropped. He called Miss Lorraine. She picked up on the first ring. "Baby, what's wrong?" "Miss Lorraine, where's Zoe?" "She's right here. We're making cookies. What's going on?" "I need you to keep her tonight. Don't let her out of your sight. And if anyone comes to the door that you don't know, anyone at all, you call 911 first and me second." Silence on the other end. Then Miss Lorraine's voice, low and hard. The voice of a woman who had raised sons through crack epidemics and gang wars and police violence, and come out the other side with all of them alive. "Marcus James Cole, you tell me what's happening, right now." "I can't explain everything right now. But I helped someone this morning, and the people who hurt her know I'm involved. I don't think they'd come after Zoe, but I'm not taking that chance." "Who hurt who?" "Marcus, please, Miss Lorraine, just tonight. I'll come get her in the morning and explain everything." Another silence. Longer this time. He could hear Zoe in the background, laughing about something, and the sound nearly broke him. "She's safe with me," Miss Lorraine finally said. "But Marcus, whatever this is, you be smart. That little girl needs her daddy. You hear me?" "Yes, ma'am." "Promise me." "I promise." He hung up and sat in the truck for another minute, staring at the hard drive resting on the seat beside him. A black rectangle the size of a book. Inside it, enough evidence to bring down one of the most powerful men in the city. And Marcus Cole, who couldn't even make rent last month, was the one holding it. His phone rang. Unknown number. He let it ring 3 times, then answered. "Mr. Cole." The voice was digitally altered, flattened into something inhuman. "You're in possession of property that doesn't belong to you." "Funny. The woman it belongs to gave it to me herself." Ms. Laurent is confused. She's been under tremendous stress. The medication, the trauma. People say things they don't mean. "She seemed pretty clear to me." "Let me be direct, Mr. Cole. You have a daughter, Zoe. She attends Westfield Elementary. She's currently at 4412 Maple Avenue with a woman named Lorraine Henderson. They're baking cookies." Marcus's blood went cold. Every muscle in his body locked. "If you come near my daughter—" "Nobody wants to come near your daughter, Mr. Cole. Nobody wants anything unpleasant to happen to anyone. All we want is the hard drive. Leave it in your truck. Park the truck at your garage. Walk away. Tomorrow morning this will all be over, and you can go back to your life." "And Vivienne Laurent? What happens to her?" "Ms. Laurent will be fine. The market will adjust. Business will continue. The strong survive."
That's how it works. That's not how it works. That's how you make it work.
Marcus's voice was shaking, but not from fear, from rage. "You shot a woman in a parking lot. You threatened a 7-year-old. And you want me to just hand over the evidence and pretend it didn't happen?" "I want you to be realistic, Mr. Cole. You're a mechanic. You're a single father. You are not equipped for this fight." "Maybe not, but I'm in it." He hung up. His hands were trembling so badly he could barely hold the phone. He sat there, in his truck, on a side street downtown, and for the first time since Denise's funeral, Marcus Cole wanted to cry. But he didn't cry. He couldn't cry. Not now. He called Detective Shelton. She answered on the second ring. "Mr. Cole." "They just called me. Whoever shot Vivienne Laurent. They know about my daughter. They know where she is right now. They threatened her." Shelton's voice sharpened. "Where are you?" "Downtown. I just left Laurent Tech. I have evidence. A hard drive that Vivienne asked me to retrieve. It has proof that Raymond Cross has been bribing city officials." "Raymond Cross." Shelton repeated the name slowly, and Marcus heard something in her voice. Not surprise. Resignation. Like she'd been waiting for this name to come up for a long time. "Mr. Cole, I'm going to send a patrol car to the address where your daughter is. Where's your daughter right now?" 4412 Maple Avenue. With my neighbor, Lorraine Henderson. "Stay where you are. I'm coming to you. Do not go home. Do not go to your shop. And do not give that hard drive to anyone except me." "Detective, they knew my daughter's name. They knew the address. They knew she was baking cookies. That means someone is watching right now." "I understand. I'm handling it. Stay on the line." Marcus stayed on the line. He listened to Shelton bark orders to someone. "Dispatch a unit to 4412 Maple, Code 2. Protect the occupants. A minor child is at risk." Professional. Efficient. The voice of someone who had done this before. But Marcus wasn't comforted. Professional and efficient didn't stop bullets. Professional and efficient didn't keep 7-year-old girls safe from men like Raymond Cross and Garrett Webb and whoever else was in this machine. Only he could do that. "Detective," he said when she came back on the line, "I'm not staying where I am. I'm going to my daughter." "Mr. Cole, I need you to—" "With all due respect, Detective, you can meet me there. But I'm going to my daughter." He hung up. He drove to Maple Avenue at 30 miles over the speed limit. He parked crooked in front of Miss Lorraine's house and was up the porch steps before the engine stopped ticking. Miss Lorraine opened the door before he knocked. One look at his face and she stepped aside without a word. Zoe was at the kitchen table, covered in flour, a cookie sheet in front of her, grinning. "Daddy, you're early! Look, I made a cookie that looks like a car." Marcus knelt down and hugged her. Tight. Too tight. She squirmed. "Daddy, you're squishing me." "I know, baby. I'm sorry. I just missed you." "You saw me this morning." "I know." He held her for another 10 seconds, memorizing the weight of her in his arms, the smell of flour and sugar in her braids, the sound of her breathing. Then he let go and stood up. Miss Lorraine was watching him from the doorway, arms crossed. "Zoe, baby," she said, her voice perfectly casual. "Why don't you go watch cartoons in the living room while I talk to your daddy?" "But the cookies aren't done." "I'll call you when they're ready." Zoe looked between them, sensing the gravity that children always sense but can never name. She took her flour-covered cookie and went to the living room. Miss Lorraine closed the kitchen door and turned on Marcus with the full force of a woman who had survived 72 years of hard living. "Talk." Marcus told her everything. The shooting, Vivian, the hospital, the hard drive, Garrett Webb, the phone call, Zoe's name on a stranger's lips. Miss Lorraine listened without interrupting. When he finished, she was quiet for a long time. Then she walked to the kitchen counter, opened a drawer, and pulled out a small revolver that Marcus had never seen before. "This was your father's," she said. "James gave it to me after Denise passed. Told me to keep it in case anything ever happened and you weren't around." She set it on the counter between them. "I've had it loaded for 3 years. Never thought I'd need it." Marcus stared at the gun. His father's gun. James Cole, who died of a heart attack at 58, working under a car in the same garage Marcus now owned. A man who'd never made more than $40,000 a year in his life, but who'd kept his family fed, his shop open, and his dignity intact through every storm. "Miss Lorraine, I can't ask you to." "You're not asking, I'm telling. That baby stays here tonight. Anyone comes through that door who shouldn't be here, they'll wish they hadn't. Now." She picked up the gun and held it with the easy familiarity of someone who knew exactly how to use it. "You go do what you need to do. And Marcus?" "Yes, ma'am?" "You come back to that little girl. Whatever happens tonight, you come back." 20 minutes later, Detective Shelton arrived with a patrol car. Marcus met her on the porch and handed over the hard drive. Shelton turned it over in her hands. "Do you know what's on this?" Vivian said it's evidence. Emails, wire transfers, recorded phone calls. Proof that Raymond Cross bribed city officials to sabotage her clean energy contract. "And she gave this to you, a man she met 3 hours ago." "She didn't have anyone else to give it to." Shelton looked at him. Really looked at him. And for the first time, her expression wasn't professional or skeptical. It was something closer to respect. "Mr. Cole, Raymond Cross has more money than God and more lawyers than the devil. Even with this evidence, bringing him down is going to be a war. You understand that?" "I understand that a man tried to kill a woman this morning and then threatened my daughter. I don't need to understand anything else." Shelton nodded. "I'm going to make copies of this drive tonight. The original goes into evidence. I'm also going to post an officer outside this house until morning." "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet." She tucked the hard drive into an evidence bag. "Mr. Cole, one more thing. Vivian Laurent's counterproposal for the clean energy contract, the one she was going to present at City Hall tomorrow, do you know what it includes?" "No." "It includes a community investment clause, subsidized power for low-income neighborhoods, job training programs, infrastructure upgrades for schools." Shelton paused. "Westfield Elementary is on the list." Marcus felt something tighten behind his eyes. Raymond Cross's version of the contract has none of that. His version is a shell company that takes public money and delivers nothing. Shelton met his gaze. "You're not just protecting a billionaire, Mr. Cole. You're protecting your daughter's school. You're protecting this neighborhood. Whether you meant to or not, you're in the middle of the most important fight this city has seen in 20 years. She walked to her car, then turned back one more time. Get some rest tonight. Tomorrow's going to be a long day. Marcus watched her drive away. The patrol car took its position at the curb. Inside the house, he could hear Zoe laughing at cartoons, and Miss Lorraine moving around the kitchen, the oven timer ticking down on a batch of cookies that a 7-year-old had shaped like cars. He sat down on the porch steps, alone in the dark, and pulled out his phone. He stared at it for a long time. Then he dialed the hospital. St. Catherine's, how may I direct your call? Vivian Laurent's room, please. A click. 2 rings. Then her voice, weaker than before, but still there. Marcus? I got it. The hard drive. It's with the detective now. He heard her exhale, a long, ragged breath that carried the weight of months of fighting. Did anyone try to stop you? Garrett Webb. Are you okay? I'm okay. They called me after. Threatened Zoe. Silence on the line. When Vivian spoke again, her voice was different, harder, colder. The voice of a woman who had clawed her way from nothing to $2 billion and wasn't about to let a man like Raymond Cross take it away. I'm going to destroy him, Marcus. Tomorrow. At City Hall. I'm going to stand up in front of every camera and every politician and every person in that room, and I'm going to end him. You just had surgery 12 hours ago. I don't care. You can barely stand. Then I'll sit, but I'll be there. She paused. Will you? Marcus looked through the window at Zoe, asleep now on Miss Lorraine's couch, one flour-covered hand hanging off the edge, a half-eaten cookie still clutched in her fingers. Yeah, he said. I'll be there. Marcus didn't sleep. He sat on Miss Lorraine's porch until 2 in the morning, watching the patrol car at the curb, watching the street, watching every headlight that turned the corner. At some point, Miss Lorraine brought him a cup of coffee and a blanket without saying a word. She sat with him for 20 minutes, then went back inside. At 4 a.m., he went in and checked on Zoe. She'd moved from the couch to the guest bedroom, tucked under a quilt that Miss Lorraine had made from old church dresses. Her braids were coming loose. There was still flour on her cheek. Marcus stood in the doorway and watched her breathe, counting each rise and fall of her small chest like it was the most important number in the world. He thought about walking away. The thought came and went like a fever, sharp, hot, tempting. He could take Zoe and drive, leave the city, start over somewhere nobody knew his name, or Vivian Laurent's name, or Raymond Cross's name. He had $2,000 in savings, a truck with a full tank, and hands that could fix anything with an engine. They could disappear. But then what? The contract goes to Cross. 3,000 jobs vanish. Westfield Elementary stays cold every January. Miss Lorraine's streetlights stay dark. And Marcus Cole spends the rest of his life knowing he ran when it mattered. His father hadn't run. His grandfather hadn't run. 3 generations of Cole men standing their ground. He wasn't going to be the one who broke that line. At 6 a.m., he showered, borrowed a clean shirt from Miss Lorraine's late husband's closet, a white button-down, slightly too big, pressed and starched the way men used to wear them, and called Detective Shelton. We made copies of the drive, Shelton said, without preamble. 3 copies, one with the DA's office, one with federal investigators, one in my safe. The original is logged in evidence. And the signing ceremony? 9 a.m. at City Hall. The mayor, the city council, representatives from both Laurent Tech and Cross Global. Press will be there. Cameras everywhere. Is Vivian cleared to go? I spoke with her surgeon an hour ago. He strongly advised against it. She told him she was going if she had to crawl. The hospital is preparing to discharge her against medical advice. Shelton paused. She's asking for you, Mr. Cole. I know. You don't have to do this. You've done enough. More than enough. Detective, they threaten my daughter. They know where she sleeps. I'm not done until the man who ordered that is in handcuffs. Shelton was quiet for a moment. I'll have plainclothes officers inside City Hall. If Cross makes any kind of move, we'll be ready. But Mr. Cole, the evidence on that drive is strong, but it's not a conviction. Not yet. Cross has the best lawyers money can buy. Today is about exposure, not arrest. You understand the difference? I understand that if the world sees what he's done, he can't hide from it. That's enough for now. All right. Pick up Ms. Laurent at St. Catherine's by 7:30. I'll meet you both at City Hall at 8. Marcus hung up and went to the kitchen, where Ms. Lorraine was already making breakfast. Eggs, grits, toast, bacon. The smells of his childhood. You're going, she said, not a question. Yes, ma'am. In my Herald shirt. If that's okay. She looked at him. Really looked. The way she'd looked at him when Denise died. The way she'd looked at him the day he brought Zoe home from the hospital. Tiny and screaming and motherless. The way a woman looks at a man she helped raise when she knows he's about to walk into something that might break him. Harold would have been proud to see you wear it. She turned back to the stove. Eat your breakfast. You can't fight on an empty stomach. He ate. He kissed Zoe goodbye while she was still sleeping, pressing his lips to her forehead, whispering a promise he intended to keep. I'll be back, Zoe Bug. Pinky promise. Then he drove to St. Catherine's Hospital. Vivian was already dressed when he arrived, or trying to be. A nurse was helping her into a dark blue suit jacket, and every small movement made her wince. The bandages around her torso were visible beneath her blouse when she shifted. Her face was pale, drawn tight with pain she was refusing to acknowledge. You look terrible, Marcus said from the doorway. Thank you. You look like a mechanic wearing a dead man's shirt. Close. It belonged to my neighbor's late husband. It suits you. She managed a thin smile, then lost it as another wave of pain hit. She gripped the edge of the bed and breathed through it. The nurse moved to steady her. Ms. Laurent, I really must advise. I heard the advice. I'm going. Marcus stepped into the room. Can you walk? I can walk. Without passing out? Probably. That's not a yes. It's the best I've got. She straightened up, and Marcus saw it again. The thing he'd seen in the parking lot. The thing that had made him carry a bleeding stranger to his truck. Determination. Not the boardroom kind. Not the corporate kind. The survival kind. The kind that came from having nothing and building everything and refusing to watch it burn. Then let's go, Marcus said. He drove. Vivian sat in the passenger seat of his truck, her eyes closed, her hand pressed against her side. She didn't complain. She didn't talk about the pain. Instead, she talked about the contract. The Clean Energy Project covers 12 neighborhoods, subsidized power rates for families below the poverty line, job training for installation and maintenance, infrastructure upgrades for schools and community centers. She opened her eyes. Your daughter's school is on the list. Detective Shelton told me. Cross's version is a joke. A shell company that takes $400 million in public funding and delivers cheap solar panels with a 10-year maintenance contract that bleeds the city dry. No subsidies, no job training, no infrastructure, just profit. And the bribes? 3 city council members, the deputy mayor, 2 inspectors from the Energy Commission. Cross has been paying them for 18 months to slow-walk my permits and fast-track his. And the shooting? Vivian's jaw tightened. I can't prove he ordered it. Not yet. The emails on the drive reference removing obstacles and ensuring compliance, but nothing explicit. Garrett Webb is a contractor. He's 3 layers removed from Cross on paper. But you know. I know. Her voice was cold and certain. Raymond Cross looked me in the eye at a fundraiser 6 months ago and told me I was making a mistake, that I should take his offer and walk away while I still could. I told him I don't walk away from anything. The next morning, my car's brake lines were cut. I drove to work and nearly went through an intersection at 60 miles an hour. Marcus gripped the steering wheel. And you didn't go to the police? I went to the police. They investigated. They found nothing. Cross covers his tracks. He's been doing it for 30 years. She turned to look at Marcus. That's why the hard drive matters. It's the first time anyone's had real evidence, not rumors.
Not suspicions. Proof. And today? Today I stand up in front of the cameras and the politicians and the press, and I show them who Raymond Cross really is. Even if he doesn't go to jail today, he'll never be able to hide again. They arrived at City Hall at 8:15. The building was already buzzing. News vans parked along the street, photographers staking positions on the steps, staffers moving in and out with the hurried importance of people who worked near power. Marcus parked the truck in a loading zone because there was nowhere else, and because he'd stopped caring about parking tickets approximately 24 hours ago. Detective Shelton was waiting at the side entrance with a plainclothes officer Marcus didn't recognize. She looked at Vivian's condition and didn't hide her concern. Ms. Laurent, are you sure about this? If one more person asks me that, I'm going to scream, and that will definitely reopen my stitches. Shelton almost smiled. Almost. The ceremony is scheduled for 9. The mayor will open, followed by presentations from both parties. Cross is already inside. He arrived 20 minutes ago with a full legal team and Garrett Webb. Marcus's stomach tightened at the name. Webb is here? Front row, sitting there like he owns the place. Shelton looked at Marcus. He won't try anything in a room full of cameras and cops, but stay alert. They entered through the side door and walked down a corridor toward the main chamber. Marcus could hear the murmur of a crowd growing louder with each step. Vivian was moving slowly, each step deliberate, her hand pressed against her side. Twice she stumbled. Twice Marcus caught her arm. She didn't thank him. She didn't need to. At the door to the chamber, she stopped. Marcus? Yeah? When we go in there, it's going to get ugly. Cross will deny everything. His lawyers will attack my credibility. They'll attack yours. They'll say I fabricated the evidence. They'll say you're a nobody who got caught up in a rich woman's delusions. She looked at him. Are you ready for that? I've been a black man in America for 34 years. I've been called a nobody my whole life. Hasn't stopped me yet. Something shifted in Vivian's eyes. Not pity, not sympathy. Recognition. The look of one fighter seeing another. Let's go. They walked in. The chamber was packed. Marcus counted maybe 200 people. Council members, staffers, press, cameras, executives in suits that cost more than his truck. At the front, a long table faced the room. The mayor sat at the center, a polished man in his 60s who smiled for cameras with the practiced ease of someone who'd been doing it for decades. To his left, the Cross Global delegation. 5 people in dark suits, all sharp edges and cold confidence. Raymond Cross sat at the end, silver-haired, broad-shouldered, the kind of man who filled a room just by existing. Beside him, Garrett Webb, motionless, watching the door. Webb saw Marcus first. Their eyes locked across the room. Webb didn't smile this time. He just looked, the way a predator looks at something it's already decided to eat. Vivian walked to the Laurent Tech side of the table. Two of her executives were already there. Theo Park, who looked like he hadn't slept either, and a woman Marcus didn't know. Vivian sat down carefully, every movement controlled, betraying nothing of the pain Marcus knew she was in. Marcus stood against the wall near the back, next to Shelton's plainclothes officer. He was the only person in the room in work boots. He was aware of every eye that landed on him, every head that tilted in curiosity or confusion or dismissal. He stood straight and kept his hands at his sides and waited. The mayor opened with pleasantries that nobody listened to, thanked both parties, praised the city's commitment to clean energy, used words like partnership and innovation and community without meaning any of them. Then he turned the floor over to Cross Global. Raymond Cross stood. He buttoned his jacket with one hand, the gesture of a man who had given 10,000 speeches and never doubted a single word. Thank you, Mayor. Ladies and gentlemen, Cross Global is proud to present our clean energy initiative for this great city. Our plan delivers results: affordable solar infrastructure, job creation, and a sustainable energy grid, all within budget and ahead of schedule. He spoke for 12 minutes, polished, confident, every number perfect, every promise gleaming. Marcus watched the council members nod along. He watched the mayor smile. He watched the press scribble in their notebooks. This was how it worked. Money talked, power talked, and the people who actually needed the help sat in neighborhoods with broken streetlights and cold schools and waited for someone to remember they existed. Cross finished to polite applause and sat down. The mayor turned to Vivian. Miss Laurent, the floor is yours. Vivian stood. It took her 3 seconds longer than it should have, and Marcus saw her grip the edge of the table, saw the flash of pain cross her face before she buried it. Every camera in the room was pointed at her. She was pale. She was hurt. She was standing in a room full of people who were ready to hand her life's work to the man who'd tried to kill her. Thank you, Mayor. Her voice was steady, clear. The voice of a woman who had built an empire from an empty apartment and a second-hand laptop. Before I present Laurent Tech's proposal, I need to address something. Yesterday morning, I was shot in a parking lot 2 blocks from this building. The room went silent. Not the polite silence of a meeting. The deep, stunned silence of a room that just had the floor pulled out from under it. 2 bullets, one of which passed through my side and ruptured my kidney. I had emergency surgery last night. I was discharged against medical advice 3 hours ago. She paused, letting the words settle. I'm telling you this not for sympathy, but for context. Because the shooting was not random. It was ordered. Raymond Cross didn't move. Not a muscle. But Marcus, watching from the back, saw Garrett Webb's hand shift to his phone. For the past 18 months, Vivian continued, I've been the target of a systematic campaign to destroy my company and force me out of this contract. My permits were delayed. My inspectors were reassigned. My financing was sabotaged by false reports leaked to my investors. And when none of that worked, someone decided a more permanent solution was necessary. Ms. Laurent, the mayor's voice was strained. These are serious allegations. Perhaps this isn't the appropriate... This is exactly the appropriate venue, Mayor. Because some of the people in this room are part of it. The chamber erupted. Voices, shuffling, camera shutters. The mayor banged his gavel. Raymond Cross leaned over to one of his lawyers, speaking rapidly. Vivian didn't stop. I have evidence.
emails between cross-global executives and 3 members of this city council, arranging payments in exchange for regulatory delays on my permits. Wire transfers totaling $2.4 million routed through shell companies in Delaware. Recorded phone calls in which a cross-global representative discusses, and I quote, "removing the Laurent obstacle by any means necessary." She nodded to Theo, who stood and connected a laptop to the chamber's display screen. Emails appeared. Dates, names, dollar amounts. Marcus watched the faces of the council members and saw the exact moment several of them realized they were looking at their own correspondence. Raymond Cross stood, his chair scraped back hard. "This is outrageous." His voice filled the room. Ms. Laurent is clearly traumatized and not in her right mind. She was shot by a random criminal and is now exploiting her own tragedy to slander my company and derail this process. He turned to the room, arms wide, the picture of righteous indignation. I have never bribed anyone. Cross Global has operated with integrity for 30 years. This is a desperate act by a desperate woman who knows she's lost. Sit down, Raymond. The voice came from the Cross Global table. Everyone turned. A woman in her late 30s, dark hair, sharp features. She looked like Raymond Cross in the way that daughters sometimes mirror their fathers. Same bone structure, same intensity, but something different in the eyes. Warmer, angrier. "Diana," Cross said, his voice dropping to something dangerous. "Not now." "Yes, now." Diana Cross stood. Her hands were trembling, but her voice was not. "My name is Diana Cross. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Cross Global Industries, and I'm Raymond Cross's daughter." The room held its breath. "Everything Ms. Laurent just said is true. I know because I've seen it from the inside." Diana reached into a folder in front of her and pulled out a stack of papers. "For the past 8 months, I've been compiling my own evidence. Internal memos, expense reports that don't match our public filings, meeting logs that my father thought were destroyed." "Diana," Raymond Cross's voice was a blade. "Stop talking. Right now." "I'm done stopping, Dad." Diana's voice cracked on the last word, and Marcus saw the cost of what she was doing. A daughter destroying her own father in front of the world. "You taught me that business is war, but you never taught me that war means shooting women in parking lots and threatening children." Marcus felt the words hit him like a physical force. Threatening children. She knew about Zoe. She knew. Raymond Cross's face changed. The mask of the distinguished businessman fell away, and underneath was something raw and cornered and furious. He turned on his daughter with an expression that Marcus recognized from his own worst nightmares. The face of a man who had lost control and was about to do something he couldn't take back. "You ungrateful, disloyal, Mr. Cross." Detective Shelton's voice cut through the room from the back. She was on her feet, badge visible, moving toward the front. "I'd advise you to choose your next words very carefully." Cross turned to her. "Who the hell are you?" "Detective Nora Shelton, Homicide Division. I've spent the last 18 hours reviewing the evidence Ms. Laurent and Ms. Cross have provided. Combined with the testimony of 3 cooperating witnesses, I have enough to proceed." She stopped in front of Raymond Cross, and the room was so quiet, Marcus could hear the camera shutters clicking like insects. "Raymond Cross, you are under arrest on suspicion of conspiracy to commit murder, bribery of public officials, and racketeering. You have the right to remain silent." Cross didn't move. For a long, terrible moment he stood there, staring at Shelton, staring at his daughter, staring at Vivian, who had not sat down, who was gripping the table with white-knuckled hands and shaking with pain and adrenaline, but standing.
still standing. Then Cross turned and looked directly at Marcus. Across the entire room. Past the cameras. Past the lawyers. Past his own daughter. He found the mechanic in the work boots and the borrowed shirt, standing against the back wall, and he stared at him with an expression of pure, distilled hatred. "You," Cross said quietly. "A mechanic. A nobody. You think you've won something?" Marcus held his gaze. He didn't flinch. He didn't look away. 34 years of being looked through, talked down to, dismissed, underestimated. 34 years of being told he was nobody. He held Raymond Cross's stare the way his father had held the stares of every man who'd ever tried to make him feel small. "I'm not nobody," Marcus said. "I'm the man who was there." Shelton cuffed Raymond Cross in front of 200 people and 16 cameras. Garrett Webb was detained at the door by 2 plainclothes officers before he could reach the exit. The chamber descended into controlled chaos. Lawyers shouting, reporters surging forward, council members scrambling. And through it all, Vivian Laurent remained standing. Marcus pushed through the crowd toward her. She saw him coming, and something in her face finally broke. The armor, the steel, the billion-dollar fortress she'd built around herself. For one unguarded moment, she was just a woman who had been shot and betrayed and terrified, and who had stood up anyway, because 3,000 people were counting on her. "It's done," she said when he reached her. "It's done." Her legs buckled. Marcus caught her. She grabbed the front of his borrowed shirt, Harold's shirt, and held on. Her forehead pressed against his chest, and she breathed. One long, shaking breath that carried the weight of everything she'd been holding. "I need to sit down," she whispered. "Yeah, you do." He helped her into a chair. Theo was there immediately. Water, phone, a dozen urgent questions. The mayor was calling for order. Diana Cross was sitting alone at the Cross Global table, staring at the empty chair where her father had been, tears running down her face without sound. Marcus stepped back. This wasn't his world. These weren't his people. He was a mechanic from Elm Street who fixed engines and packed lunches and made pinky promises to a 7-year-old girl. He'd done what he came to do. He turned to leave. "Marcus!" Vivian's voice stopped him at the door. He turned back. She was looking at him across the chaos of the room, past the cameras and the reporters and the wreckage of Raymond Cross's empire. "Thank you," she said. He nodded once. Then he walked out of City Hall, down the steps, past the news vans and the photographers, into the morning sunlight. He got into his truck, sat behind the wheel, and called Miss Lorraine. "It's over," he said. "I'm coming to get my daughter." Miss Lorraine was standing on the porch when he pulled up. Zoe was beside her, backpack on, lunchbox in hand, ready for school like it was any other Thursday morning. Marcus got out of the truck, and Zoe ran down the steps and threw herself into his arms so hard it nearly knocked him backward.
"Daddy, Miss Lorraine let me have cookies for breakfast."
"Did she now?"
"She said it was a special occasion."
Marcus looked over Zoe's head at Miss Lorraine, who shrugged with the unapologetic authority of a woman who had earned the right to spoil other people's children. "It was a special occasion," Miss Lorraine said. "Her daddy came home." Marcus carried Zoe to the truck, buckled her in, and walked back to the porch. He stood in front of Miss Lorraine and didn't say anything for a moment because the words were stuck somewhere between his chest and his throat, jammed up like a transmission with no fluid. "Thank you," he finally managed. "Boy, don't you thank me. You did what your father would have done, what your grandfather would have done." She put her hand on his cheek, the way she'd done since he was 9 years old. "Now go take that baby to school. And Marcus." "Yes, ma'am."
Get some sleep tonight. You look like death warmed over." He took Zoe to school. They were late, of course. At the gate, Zoe turned to him with her Supreme Court face. "You broke your pinky promise yesterday." "I know, Zoe Bug. I'm sorry." "Miss Lorraine said you were helping someone." "I was." "Was the person okay?" Marcus thought about Vivienne standing at that podium, shaking, bleeding through her bandages, refusing to sit down. "Yeah, baby. The person was okay." "Good." Zoe extended her pinky. "New promise. Today you pick me up on time." Pinky promise. Their fingers locked. She studied his face, satisfied, and ran through the gate. Marcus drove to the garage. He hadn't been there since yesterday morning, which felt like a lifetime ago. The shop was exactly as he'd left it. Door half open, the transmission job still on the lift. Mr. Pemberton's appointment missed. He checked his phone. 4 missed calls from clients. A text from Mr. Pemberton that said, "Buick's making that noise again. No rush, son. I know you're busy." No rush. Mr.
Pemberton, who drove the same car he'd owned since Clinton was president, who came in every month with a new rattle and always paid in cash and always asked about Zoe. These were the people Marcus's life was built around. Not billionaires, not boardrooms. People who said, "No rush," and meant it. He went to work. He put on his coveralls. He slid under the transmission job and let his hands do what they knew how to do. Bolts and bearings and gaskets, things that made sense, things that followed rules, things that didn't shoot at you or threaten your daughter. By noon, the news had broken everywhere. Marcus knew because his phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Texts from people he hadn't heard from in years. A call from his cousin in Atlanta. Miss Lorraine texting him a link to the news with the message, "Baby, is that you?" He didn't look at any of it. He finished the transmission, called the client, moved on to an oil change. Grease under his fingernails. Honest work. The only language he'd ever been fluent in. At 2:15, a taxi pulled up outside the garage. Marcus was under a Honda Accord when he heard the door shut and the click of shoes on concrete. Not heels, flats. Slow, careful steps. He rolled out from under the car, and there was Vivienne Laurent, standing in the doorway of his shop, wearing the same dark blue suit from City Hall, but with a hospital discharge band still on her wrist. She looked like she'd walked out of a war zone and stopped at a board meeting on the way. "You should be in bed," Marcus said. "Probably." She looked around the garage, at the tools on the pegboard, at the oil stains on the floor, at the hand-painted sign above the door that read, "Cole's Auto Repair, EST 1971. "So this is it." "This is it." "It's smaller than I expected." "Most things are." She walked to the workbench and picked up a framed photograph sitting between a torque wrench and a can of WD-40. Marcus and Denise on their wedding day. Marcus in a rented suit that didn't fit. Denise in a white dress she'd found at a thrift store and altered herself. Both of them grinning like they'd just gotten away with something. "She was beautiful," Vivienne said. "Yeah, she was." Vivienne set the photo down carefully and turned to face him. The city council voted unanimously to award the clean energy contract to Laurent Tech. Raymond Cross has been indicted on 14 counts. Garrett Webb is cooperating with prosecutors in exchange for a reduced sentence. 3 council members have resigned. The deputy mayor is expected to resign by Friday. That was fast. It's amazing how fast things move when there's video evidence on every news channel in the country. She paused. Diana Cross testified for 2 hours this afternoon. She gave the DA everything. Her father's personal files, offshore accounts, communication logs going back 5 years.
She burned down her own family's empire to do the right thing.
Marcus wiped his hands on a rag. That couldn't have been easy for her. It wasn't. I spoke with her after. She's terrified. Her family is going to disown her. Half the board wants her gone. But she said something that stuck with me. Vivian's voice shifted, softer. She said she watched you stand up to her father in that chamber, and she realized that if a man with nothing to gain could be that brave, then she had no excuse to keep being a coward. Marcus didn't know what to do with that, so he changed the subject. How's your side? Hurts. A lot. I'm supposed to be on bed rest for 2 weeks. She sat down on the metal stool by the workbench, moving slowly, and Marcus could see the effort it took her to keep her face neutral. But I didn't come here to talk about the contract, or the arrest, or my stitches. Then why did you come? Because I owe you something, and I want to pay it before you have a chance to say no. Marcus crossed his arm. I already told you I don't want your money. It's not money. It's a conversation. Vivian met his eyes. Sit down, Marcus. He didn't sit. He leaned against the workbench and waited. Your garage is in one of the most valuable locations in the city, she began. You're sitting on 3 blocks of prime real estate between the financial district and the residential corridor. Every luxury car in this zip code drives past your door twice a day. And you're doing oil changes and brake jobs for 20-year-old Buicks. Those 20-year-old Buicks belong to people who need them. I know. And I'm not asking you to stop serving those people. I'm asking you to add to what you do. High-end maintenance and repair for luxury and performance vehicles. There are exactly 2 honest mechanics in this city who can work on a Ferrari or a Porsche, and both of them charge $300 an hour. You're better than both of them, and you'd charge a fair price because that's who you are. You've known me for 2 days. I've known you long enough. She pulled a folder from her bag and set it on the workbench. This is a business proposal, not charity, an investment. I put up the capital for equipment, renovation, and marketing. You keep full ownership and operational control. I take 30% equity and a seat on the advisory board, which, for a company this size, means I come by once a month and tell you you're doing a great job. Marcus didn't touch the folder. Why? Because you saved my life, and I want to help you. That's charity with extra steps. No, Marcus. That's business with a conscience. Vivian's voice was firm, but not hard. Patient. The voice of someone who'd pitched 1,000 deals, but had never meant one this much. I ran the numbers. Your location alone is worth a fortune. With the right equipment, you could triple your revenue in the first year. You could hire people from this neighborhood. You could give Zoe stability. The name hit him where she knew it would. He looked away. Don't use my daughter to close a deal. I'm not closing a deal. I'm telling you the truth. You've been drowning for 3 years, Marcus. Since Denise died, you've been keeping your head above water through pure stubbornness. And it's working, barely. But for how long? What happens when the truck breaks down and you can't afford to fix it? What happens when Zoe needs braces, or a computer for school, or wants to play soccer and you can't cover the registration fee? I'll figure it out. I always figure it out. I know you will, but you shouldn't have to figure it out alone. Vivian leaned forward, wincing at the movement, but not stopping. Marcus, I grew up with nothing. My mother died when I was 12. I lived in 4 different foster homes before I turned 18. I started my company with a borrowed laptop and $600 in a checking account. I know what it feels like to do everything alone, and I know that the hardest thing in the world is accepting help when you've spent your whole life proving you don't need it. The garage was quiet. Outside, a car passed. A dog barked somewhere down the block. Marcus stared at the folder on the workbench and thought about his father, who'd stood in the same spot for 25 years and never once asked anyone for a dime. "My dad would have said no," Marcus said quietly. "Your dad didn't have a billionaire walk into his shop 2 days after he saved her life." He would have still said no. "Then maybe your dad was wrong." Marcus looked at her sharply. Nobody talked about James Cole like that. Nobody. But Vivian held his gaze without flinching. "I mean that with respect. Your father was a great man. He built this shop. He raised you. He kept his family together. But pride is not a business strategy, Marcus, and stubbornness is not a retirement plan." The words landed like a wrench on concrete. Hard. True. The kind of true that hurts because you've been avoiding it. Marcus picked up the folder. He didn't open it. He held it in his hands and felt the weight of it. Not the paper, but the possibility. A different life. A shop that didn't just survive, but thrived. Zoe with new shoes whenever she needed them. College fund. Health insurance. The kind of security his father never had, and his grandfather never dreamed of. "I need to think about it," he said. "Take all the time you need. And I have conditions. I'd expect nothing less. I stay head mechanic. I hire who I want. And Mr. Pemberton gets his Buick fixed for free for the rest of his life." Vivian's lips twitched. "Who's Mr. Pemberton?" "A man who drives a '98 Buick and says, 'No rush,' when I miss his appointment because I'm busy saving billionaires." "Deal." "I haven't said yes yet." "I know, but you will." She stood, carefully, and extended her hand. Marcus took it. Her grip was strong, despite everything. The surgery, the pain, the 2 days of hell she'd been through. They shook hands in a garage that smelled like motor oil and honest work, and something shifted between them. Not romance. Not yet. Something quieter. The beginning of trust between two people who'd learned the hard way that trust was the most expensive thing in the world. "One more thing," Marcus said, still holding her hand. "Zoe wants to name the shop Cat." "You don't have a shop cat." "Not yet. But Zoe's been lobbying for one since she was 4. And if I'm renovating anyway, I figure a cat comes with the territory." Vivian laughed. A real laugh, not the controlled, polished thing he'd seen on the news. A laugh that hurt her stitches and made her grab her side and didn't stop. "Tell Zoe she can name the cat," Vivian said when she caught her breath. "And I'd like to meet her, if that's okay." "Why?" "Because I'd like to know the girl whose father keeps his promises." Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded. "Come by Saturday. She'll be here. She does her homework in the back office while I work." "Saturday," Vivian said, and then she left, climbing back into the taxi with the careful, deliberate movements of a woman who was held together by stitches and willpower. And Marcus watched her go and tried to remember the last time someone had walked into his life and made it bigger instead of smaller. He couldn't remember. Maybe it had never happened before. He went back to work. He finished the oil change. He called Mr. Pemberton and scheduled the Buick for Friday. He swept the floor, locked up the garage, and drove to Westfield Elementary. He was 7 minutes early. Zoe came through the gate and saw him, and her face split into a grin so wide it could have powered the whole neighborhood. "You're early!" she shrieked, running to the truck. "Told you." "You're early, Daddy!" "I heard you the first time, Zoe Bug." She climbed in, buckled up, and immediately launched into a report about her day. The volcano project was due next week. Her friend Maria got in trouble for talking during reading time, and the cafeteria served something called mystery meat that Zoe was convinced was actually rubber. Marcus drove home, listening, laughing in the right places, asking questions that made her talk more. This was his life, this right here. The truck and the kid and the 5-block radius that contained everything that mattered. But maybe the radius could get a little bigger. That night, after Zoe was in bed, Marcus sat at the kitchen table and opened Vivienne's folder. Inside were financial projections, equipment lists, renovation plans, marketing strategies. It was thorough, professional. Every number made sense. At the bottom of the last page, in handwriting that was surprisingly messy for a billionaire, Vivienne had written, "Your grandfather built something that matters. Let's make sure it lasts." Marcus stared at that sentence for a long time. Then he called Miss Lorraine. "Baby, it's 10 o'clock. What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. I need advice." "At 10 o'clock? It can't wait." He told her about the proposal, the investment, the renovation, the 30% equity. Miss Lorraine listened without interrupting, which was unusual for her, and Marcus took it as a sign that she was taking this seriously. When he finished, she was quiet for a while. Then she said, "You know what your daddy told me the week before he died?" "No, ma'am." "He said, 'Lorraine, I built that shop for Marcus, but I'm afraid I built the walls too high. He's going to spend his whole life inside them because I taught him that's where he was safe.' He was worried about you, baby. Not that you'd fail, that you'd never try." Marcus closed his eyes. His father, 58 years old, dying of a heart attack under a car, and his last worry wasn't about himself. It was about his son. "Your daddy never took charity," Miss Lorraine continued, "but he always took opportunity. He knew the difference, Marcus. Do you?" "I think I'm starting to." "Then you already know what to do. Now let me go to sleep." She hung up. Marcus sat at the table for another hour, reading through the proposal again, running numbers in his head, thinking about Zoe's college fund and new shoes, and a shop cat with a name only a 7-year-old could dream up. At midnight, he texted Vivienne. 3 words. "I'm in. Conditions stand." Her reply came in 30 seconds. "I wouldn't have it any other way. And tell Zoe I'm partial to orange cats." He put the phone down, turned off the kitchen light, and went to check on Zoe one more time. She was asleep, one arm hanging off the bed, her crayon drawing of "My dad is the best mechanic" taped to the wall above her pillow. Marcus leaned against the doorframe and let himself feel something he hadn't felt in 3 years. Not happiness exactly, not yet, but the absence of dread, the quiet, tentative sensation of a man who had been bracing for the next blow and suddenly realized that maybe, just maybe, the next thing coming wasn't a blow at all. Saturday came faster than Marcus expected. He spent Friday cleaning the garage like he'd never cleaned it before, sweeping every corner, organizing tools, wiping down the workbench, even washing the windows, which he hadn't done since Denise was alive. Zoe watched him from her homework spot in the back office with naked suspicion. "Why are you cleaning?" "Because it's dirty." "It's always dirty. It's a garage." "Well, today it's going to be a clean garage." "Is someone coming?" "A friend." "You don't have friends." "Thank you, Zoe. That's very supportive." "I mean grown-up friends. You have me and Miss Lorraine and Mr. Pemberton. That's it." Marcus couldn't argue with the accuracy of this assessment, so he kept cleaning. Vivienne arrived at noon. No taxi this time. She drove herself, in a rental car that was expensive but not flashy. And she walked into the garage, carrying a paper bag from the bakery 2 blocks over. "I brought croissants," she said. "I didn't know what you liked, so I got one of everything." "Daddy doesn't eat croissants," Zoe announced from the back office doorway. "He eats gas station breakfast sandwiches." "Zoe," Marcus said. "What? It's true." Vivienne looked at Zoe, and something happened to her face that Marcus had never seen before. The corporate mask, the controlled expression, the careful neutrality, all of it dissolved. What was left was something raw and real and almost fragile. "You must be Zoe," Vivian said. "You must be the lady my daddy saved." "That's me." Zoe walked over and examined Vivian with the unfiltered scrutiny that only children are capable of. "You're prettier than I thought." "Thank you." "Daddy said you were hurt. Are you okay now?" "Getting better every day, thanks to your dad." Zoe nodded, processing this. Then she reached a verdict. "Do you like cats?" "I love cats." "Orange ones?" "Especially orange ones." "Okay, you can stay." And just like that, Zoe went back to the office to finish her homework, and Vivienne Laurent, billionaire, CEO, survivor, stood in the middle of Cole's Auto Repair with tears in her eyes and a bag of croissants and the unmistakable expression of a woman who had just been given something money couldn't buy. Marcus handed her a paper towel from the roll on the workbench. "She has that effect on people." Vivian wiped her eyes and laughed. "She's extraordinary." "She's her mother's daughter." They ate croissants on the workbench. Vivian asked about the renovation plans, and Marcus walked her through the space, showing her where the new lifts would go, where the diagnostic bay could fit, where the waiting area would be for clients who drove cars worth more than most people's houses. He talked about it the way he talked about engines, with knowledge and care, and a quiet passion that came from loving the work, not just doing it. Vivian listened. She asked questions that showed she'd done her homework, about hydraulic lift specifications, diagnostic software, insurance requirements. But mostly she listened. And at some point, Marcus realized he was talking more freely than he had in years. Not just about the garage, about Zoe, about Denise, about his father, about the fear that kept him up at night, that he wasn't enough, that the shop would fail, that Zoe would grow up and look back and see a man who tried his best and came up short. He didn't know why he was telling Vivian Laurent these things. Maybe because she'd bled in his truck. Maybe because she'd stood at that podium with stitches in her side and refused to sit down. Maybe because she looked at him like he was a person, not a project. "You're enough, Marcus," Vivian said when he finished. "You've been enough this whole time. You just couldn't see it because you were too busy surviving to look up." He didn't respond, but he heard her. And somewhere deep in the part of himself that he'd boarded up after Denise died, a window cracked open. At 3 o'clock, Zoe emerged from the office and declared that she was bored and hungry, and that someone needed to take her for ice cream immediately. Vivian looked at Marcus. Marcus looked at Zoe. Zoe looked at both of them with the immovable certainty of a child who has decided what is going to happen next. They got ice cream. The three of them, walking down Elm Street in the afternoon sun, a mechanic, a billionaire, and a 7-year-old with chocolate ice cream on her nose. They looked like nobody special. They looked like a family. They weren't, not yet. But for the first time in 3 years, Marcus Cole allowed himself to wonder if maybe, someday, they could be. The renovation took 3 months. Marcus had expected chaos, and he got it. His garage, his father's garage, his grandfather's garage, was torn apart and rebuilt from the inside out. New concrete floors, new lifts, a diagnostic bay with equipment that cost more than he'd made in the last 5 years combined. A waiting area with actual chairs instead of the plastic milk crate he'd been offering customers since 2019. But Marcus had insisted on one thing, and Vivian hadn't argued. The sign stayed. Cole's Auto Repair. ES time 1971. Same hand-painted lettering. Same wooden board.
His grandfather's name was in that sign, even if it didn't say it. His father's sweat was in it. Denise had stood under it the first time she'd come to the shop, 19 years old, driving a Honda Civic with a cracked radiator hose, asking if the mechanic could fix it cheap because she was a nursing student and couldn't afford much. Marcus had fixed it for free. She'd come back the next day with a plate of food and a smile that rewired his entire brain. They were married 14 months later. The sign stayed. During the renovation, Marcus worked out of a rented bay 3 blocks away. It was smaller, darker, and smelled like mildew. But Mr. Pemberton still came every month with his '98 Buick, and the regular clients followed because that's what happens when you treat people right for long enough. They follow you, even into a mildew-scented rental bay with bad lighting. Vivian came by once a week, sometimes twice. She never came empty-handed. Croissants from the bakery, a new coloring book for Zoe, a box of nitrile gloves when she noticed Marcus was running low. Small things, practical things. The gifts of a woman who paid attention. They talked. That was the thing Marcus hadn't expected. Not the investment, not the renovation, not the upheaval of his entire professional life. The talking. Vivian Laurent, who commanded boardrooms and negotiated billion-dollar deals, would sit on an overturned bucket in his rented bay and talk to him while he worked. About her company, about the clean energy project, about growing up in foster care, moving from house to house, learning early that the only person she could count on was herself. "I aged out of the system at 18, she told him one evening while he was replacing brake pads on a Toyota. No family, no money, no safety net. I got a scholarship to community college, worked nights at a call center, taught myself to code on a library computer. Started Laurent Tech in my apartment with a second-hand laptop and a business plan I wrote on the back of takeout menus. And now you're worth $2 billion. On paper. Most of it is tied up in the company. My actual checking account balance would probably disappoint you." "I doubt that." She smiled. "The point is, I know what it's like to build something from nothing, and I know what it's like to be terrified that it's all going to disappear. That's why I pushed you on the investment, Marcus. Not because I think you need saving, because I know what it feels like to need a door to open when every window is closed." Marcus slid out from under the Toyota and looked at her. Grease on his face, sweat on his shirt. A woman worth $2 billion sitting on a bucket in a rented garage, telling him about takeout menus and library computers. "You know what Denise would have said about you?" he asked. "What?" "She would have said, 'You're good people.' That was her highest compliment. Not smart, not successful. Good people." Vivian was quiet for a moment. "I would have liked to meet her." "She would have liked you. She would have also told you to stop sitting on that bucket because it's got a crack in it and you'll end up on the floor." Vivian looked down, saw the crack, and stood up so fast it pulled her stitches. They both laughed. It was the easiest sound Marcus had made in 3 years. The weeks passed. The renovation progressed. And somewhere in the middle of all of it, between the construction noise and the business meetings and the bedtime stories and the brake jobs, Marcus Cole started to feel something he'd forgotten existed. Hope. Not the desperate, teeth-clenched hope of a man trying to survive. The quiet, steady hope of a man who was starting to believe that maybe the worst was behind him. That maybe the universe wasn't just a machine designed to take things away. Zoe noticed before he did. Kids always do. "Daddy, you're smiling more," she said one night at dinner. "Am I?" "Yeah. You used to only smile when I did something funny. Now you smile when you're just driving or cooking or looking at your phone." "Maybe I'm reading funny texts." "From Miss Vivian?" Marcus set down his fork.
How do you know about Miss Vivian's texts?
Because you do the face.
What face?
The face.
Zoe scrunched up her features into an exaggerated grin.
That face.
I do not make that face.
You totally make that face.
He threw a napkin at her. She caught it and threw it back. And Marcus thought about how Denise used to say that Zoe had his stubbornness and her honesty, and that the combination would either save the world or drive everyone crazy. She'd been right about that, too. Raymond Cross's trial began in October. Marcus followed it on the news, mostly because Miss Lorraine called him every evening with updates she'd gotten from watching cable news all day, which she claimed was research and not entertainment.
They got him, baby, she reported one night. 14 counts. His own daughter testified against him. That Diana girl sat up there for 6 hours and told everything. I cried twice.
You cried?
I'm 72 years old. I cry when I want to.
The trial lasted 3 weeks. Garrett Webb had taken a plea deal and testified for the prosecution, providing details about Cross's operations that even Diana hadn't known. The bribery, the sabotage, the brake lines on Vivian's car, the parking lot shooting, contracted through 3 layers of intermediaries, but traceable, with Webb's testimony directly back to Raymond Cross's authorization. Marcus was called to testify on the 8th day. He'd dreaded it for weeks. The courthouse, the lawyers, the cameras, the stairs. He wore Harold's white shirt again, pressed and starched the way Miss Lorraine had taught him, and he sat in the witness chair and told the truth. The prosecutor walked him through it step by step. The gunshots, finding Vivian, the drive to the hospital, the hard drive, Garrett Webb in the parking garage, the phone call threatening Zoe. Cross's defense attorney, a man with silver cufflinks and a voice like polished wood, stood for cross-examination. He smiled at Marcus the way people smile at things they consider beneath them. "Mr. Cole, you're a mechanic, is that correct?" "Yes, sir." "No legal training, no business background, no experience in corporate matters?" "No, sir." "And yet you inserted yourself into a situation involving a multi-billion-dollar corporation, retrieved confidential materials from a private office, and made accusations against one of the most respected businessmen in this city. All within 24 hours of meeting a woman you'd never seen before." "That's correct." "Why?" Marcus looked at the lawyer. Then he looked past him at Raymond Cross, sitting at the defense table in a suit that cost more than Marcus's truck. Cross stared back with the same cold hatred he'd shown at City Hall. "Because she was bleeding," Marcus said, "and nobody else stopped." The lawyer paused, regrouped. "Mr. Cole, isn't it true that Ms. Laurent offered you a significant financial investment in your business?" "She did." "After these events?" "Yes." "So you stood to gain financially from helping Ms. Laurent?" "I stood to gain a better garage. That's not why I helped her." "How can you be sure?" "Because I helped her before I knew her name, before I knew she had money, and before I knew anything about her business. She was a woman shot in a parking lot. I'm a man who was raised to help. That's the whole story." The courtroom was quiet. The defense attorney looked at the jury, then back at Marcus, and decided not to push further. Smart man. He knew when a witness was unshakable. And Marcus Cole, who had spent his entire life being underestimated, was not going to crack under a suit with silver cufflinks. The verdict came on a Wednesday. Guilty on 12 of 14 counts. Conspiracy to commit murder, bribery, racketeering, wire fraud. Raymond Cross was sentenced to 32 years in federal prison. He was 60 years old. He would die behind bars. Marcus heard the news on the radio while changing the oil on Mr. Pemberton's Buick. He turned the radio off, finished the oil change, and called Vivian.
"You heard?" she asked.
"I heard."
"How do you feel?"
Marcus wiped his hands on a rag and thought about it. "I feel like it's over."
"It is over."
"Then I feel like I can breathe." Vivian was quiet for a moment.
"Me too."
Cole's Performance and Luxury Auto opened its doors on the first Saturday in November. Marcus had fought Vivian on the name for 2 weeks. She wanted Cole's Luxury Automotive. He wanted to keep Cole's Auto Repair. They compromised the way two stubborn people compromise, by arguing until they were both too tired to argue anymore, and settling on something in the middle. The sign was new, but matched the old one. Hand-painted, same style, same wooden board. Underneath the new name, in smaller letters, it still read EST, 1971. 3 generations. Same corner, same family, different chapter. Marcus hired 4 mechanics, all from the neighborhood. Darnell, who'd been fixing cars in his driveway for years and never had the chance to do it professionally. Sophia, a single mother who'd gone through a vocational program and couldn't get hired anywhere because she didn't have experience. Ty, a 19-year-old who'd been headed nowhere fast until Mr. Pemberton told Marcus about a kid at his church who was good with engines and needed a chance. And Ray, a 50-year-old Army veteran who'd been working at a chain shop for minimum wage and cried when Marcus offered him the job. "You're paying me what?" Ray had asked, staring at the offer letter. "What you're worth," Marcus had said. The grand opening was something Marcus never could have imagined. Not the event itself. Vivian's marketing team had handled that, and it was polished and professional, and exactly the kind of thing Marcus would have been uncomfortable with if he'd been paying attention to it. But he wasn't paying attention to the banners, or the catering, or the press. He was watching the people. Miss Lorraine, in her Sunday best, telling anyone who would listen that she'd known Marcus since he was a baby, and that his father would have been proud. Mr. Pemberton, leaning against his Buick parked out front like a museum exhibit, telling Darnell about the time the engine caught fire in 2017, and Marcus put it out with a shop towel and a Diet Coke. Sophia's kids running around the new waiting area. Theo Park, who had become an unlikely friend, standing awkwardly with a glass of sparkling water and trying to make small talk with Ray about torque wrenches. Detective Shelton came. She shook Marcus's hand and didn't let go for a long time. "You know," she said, "I've been a detective for 22 years. I've seen a lot of people get pulled into things that are bigger than them. Most of them break. Some of them run. You're the first one I've seen come out the other side, standing taller than when you went in." "I had help." "You had courage. The help came because of the courage. Don't get that backward. Diana Cross came too." That surprised Marcus. She arrived quietly, without an entourage, in a simple dress that looked nothing like the corporate armor she'd worn at City Hall. She found Marcus near the back of the shop and stood in front of him with the uncertain posture of someone who wasn't sure they were welcome. "I wanted to see it," she said. "The shop. I wanted to see what you built." "It's a garage," Marcus said. "Nothing fancy." "It's not nothing." Diana looked around, and Marcus could see her doing the same thing Vivienne had done months ago. Seeing the tools, the lifts, the name on the wall, the people gathered to celebrate a man who fixed things for a living. "My father destroyed things, built empires, but destroyed people. You build things, real things, for real people. Your father made his choices, you made yours. My choices cost me my family. Your choices saved 3,000 jobs and put a man who tried to kill someone in prison. That's not nothing either." Diana's eyes filled, and she blinked hard and fast, the way people do when they're determined not to cry in public. "Thank you, Marcus." "For what?" "For being brave first, so the rest of us could follow." She left before the ribbon cutting, slipping out quietly the way she'd come. Marcus watched her go and thought about how courage has a cost that most people never see. The loneliness of doing the right thing when the right thing means losing everything you know. At noon, Zoe cut the ribbon. She stood in front of the garage in the outfit she'd picked out herself. A tiny mechanic's jumpsuit that Vivian had custom ordered with coal stitched on the back in gold thread. She held the oversized scissors with both hands and grinned at the crowd with the ferocious joy of a child who knows, absolutely knows, that her father is the greatest man in the world. "Ready, Zoe Bug?" Marcus asked. "Ready, Daddy." She cut the ribbon. The crowd cheered. Miss Lorraine cried. Mr. Pemberton honked the Buick's horn, which hadn't worked properly since 2014, and chose this exact moment to come back to life with a sound like a dying goose, which made everyone laugh, which made Mr. Pemberton honk it again. Marcus stood in front of his shop, his new, impossible, terrifying, beautiful shop, and looked across the crowd. Past the neighbors and the friends and the clients and the press. Past Miss Lorraine and Mr. Pemberton and Detective Shelton and Theo Park. And he found Vivian. She was standing at the edge of the crowd, not in the center, not commanding attention, not being the billionaire CEO or the corporate powerhouse or the woman on magazine covers. She was standing off to the side in a simple dress, clapping with everyone else, and looking at Marcus with an expression he recognized because he'd seen it before. Denise used to look at him that way. On their wedding day, the day Zoe was born, the night he told her about his dream to take over his father's shop. It was the look of a woman who saw a man not for what he had, but for who he was. Marcus held Vivian's gaze across the crowd, and something passed between them that didn't need words. Not a promise, not a declaration, just an understanding. Two people from different worlds who had found in each other something neither was looking for, and both desperately needed. Later, after the crowd had thinned and the catering was packed up, and Zoe had fallen asleep on the new waiting area couch with the shop cat, an orange tabby she'd named Professor Whiskers, curled up beside her, Marcus and Vivian sat on the tailgate of his truck in the parking lot. "How does it feel?" Vivian asked. "Terrifying." "Good terrifying or bad terrifying?" "The kind where you know your life just changed and you can't go back." "You don't want to go back?" "No," Marcus said, and realized as he said it that it was the truest thing he'd felt in years. "I don't." They sat in silence for a while, the kind of silence that doesn't need filling, the kind that two people earn by going through something together that most people never go through alone. "Marcus," Vivian said. "Yeah, I'm going to say something, and I need you not to run away." "I'm sitting on my own truck. Where am I going to run?" She turned to face him. "I didn't come to your garage that first Saturday just because of the business proposal. I came because when I was lying on that operating table, the last thing I thought about before the anesthesia hit wasn't my company. It wasn't the contract. It wasn't Raymond Cross. It was you. A man I'd known for 2 hours who carried me to his truck and told me I wasn't going to die in a parking lot." She paused. "Nobody has ever done anything like that for me. In my entire life. Nobody." "Vivian, I'm not finished." She held up a hand. "I know this is complicated. I know our lives are different. I know you're still grieving Denise, and I would never try to replace her. I know Zoe has to come first, always. I know all of that. But I also know that I haven't felt safe with another person since I was 12 years old. And I feel safe with you.
And I think that means something.
Marcus looked at her. The parking lot light caught her face, and he could see the scar on her side through the fabric of her dress. The place where a bullet had entered her body and changed both their lives. It means something, he said.
Yeah?
Yeah. He took her hand. Not the way he'd taken it in the garage. The handshake, the business deal, the formality of two people making an agreement. He took her hand the way a man takes a woman's hand when he's decided to stop being afraid. Vivian's fingers closed around his, strong, steady. The hand of a woman who had built empires and survived bullets and sat on overturned buckets in rented garages, eating croissants. We take it slow, Marcus said. As slow as you need. Zoe sets the pace. I wouldn't have it any other way. And you should know, I'm a terrible cook. I snore, I work too much, and I will always smell like motor oil. Vivian leaned her head against his shoulder.
I work 80 hours a week. I haven't taken a vacation in 6 years. I don't know how to cook anything except scrambled eggs, and I once fired someone for using the wrong font in a presentation.
What font?
Comic Sans.
That's a fireable offense. She laughed against his shoulder, and he felt it in his chest. The vibration of joy in another person's body, transmitted through contact, the most human frequency there is. Inside the shop, Zoe stirred on the couch. Professor Whiskers repositioned himself on her stomach. The new lifts gleamed under the overhead lights. The old sign, established 1971, cast a shadow on the new concrete floor. 3 generations of coal men, grease under their fingernails, honest work in their hearts. And now, for the first time, something more than survival on the horizon.
Marcus sat on the tailgate of his truck, with Vivian Laurent's hand in his, and his daughter sleeping 20 feet away in a garage that bore his family's name. And he understood something that had taken him 34 years and 1 impossible week to learn. He'd spent his whole life thinking that strength meant carrying everything alone, that asking for help was weakness, that the walls his father built were there to protect him. But walls don't just keep things out, they keep things in. And Marcus had been locked inside his own fortress for so long, he'd forgotten there was a world on the other side. Vivian hadn't rescued him. He hadn't rescued her. They'd rescued each other. In a parking lot, on a Tuesday morning, when a mechanic heard gunshots and ran toward them instead of away. That was the whole story. Not billions of dollars, not corporate conspiracies, not courtroom dramas. A man ran toward a stranger who was bleeding, and everything changed.
2 months later, on a cold Saturday morning, Marcus drove Zoe to Westfield Elementary for the winter science fair. The school was warm. The hallways were lit. The heating system, upgraded as part of the Laurent Tech Clean Energy Project, hummed quietly in the walls, doing its job the way good infrastructure does, invisibly, reliably, for the people who need it most. Zoe's volcano erupted on cue, spewing baking soda lava across the table while her classmates cheered. Marcus filmed it on his phone. Vivian, standing beside him, applauded like it was the most impressive feat of engineering she'd ever witnessed, which, considering she ran a $2 billion tech company, was saying something. "She's going to be a scientist," Vivian whispered. "She's going to be whatever she wants to be," Marcus said. Zoe looked up from her volcano, found them in the crowd, and waved with both hands, grinning so wide her face could barely hold it. Baking soda on her jumpsuit, her mother's smile, her father's stubborn, unbreakable heart. Marcus waved back. He wasn't late. He wasn't worried about rent. He wasn't lying awake at 3 a.m. wondering if he was enough. For the first time since Denise died, Marcus Cole looked at his life and saw something other than a man trying not to drown. He saw a man standing on solid ground. The world doesn't change because of billion-dollar deals, or boardroom showdowns, or headlines on the evening news. It changes the way it has always changed. One person at a time, one choice at a time. One ordinary morning when someone hears a scream and decides to run toward it instead of away. Marcus Cole was not a hero. He was a mechanic, a father, a man who kept his promises. And on a Tuesday morning in a parking lot on Elm Street, that was exactly enough.